Food halls, food halls, food halls, food halls. Everybody wants food halls, it seems, these days. There's 32 right now in Manhattan. There, I believe, are 18, 19 coming to market here in South Florida anytime soon. Everybody's talking about food halls. I guess it's the next step up from food trucks. So now we have food halls because we've got a lot of empty space with retail and they're looking for things to fill there, and restaurants have become a destination and a way to drive traffic. So food halls are very popular. So I got a lot of information to pack in here. I went to the EEE conference and sat in on a very, very informative food hall discussion. Mr. Phil Collichio, whose brother is Tom Collichio, the chef. So Phil is a former attorney who is now in the consulting business for restaurants. So he came up with some interesting stats. He said there were 112 food halls that opened recently last year, and only 2 have closed, and they're going to be doing a forensic on that. So here's some good information. Grab a pen. Garrick Brown from Cushman and Wakefield is going to be putting out a 2016 food report that will go over a lot of the statistics that are going on. Some statistics you may not know. The smallest food court is 1,100 square feet. The largest is 165,000 square feet. That's the Chelsea Food Market. The average size of a food hall is 12 to 15,000 square feet. They're saying that 25 to 35,000 square feet is about the sweet spot right now for food halls. A good example, one of the first food halls that can kind of give you an idea of what's going on would be Gotham West. They are just now starting to get some of the hiccups that they've made a lot of the mistakes that have gone along with food halls. One of the most interesting, I would say there's 2 points that I want to touch on first that were probably the most interesting. The first one was the easiest part of opening a food hall is getting vendors. You will have no problem getting vendors to line up to take a spot, whether it's 110 square feet, whether it's 350 square feet. You will not have any problem getting vendors. The hardest part of having a food hall, I gave it away, running the food hall. There is a real disparity for management. You've got a few people that are trying to get into the game, but the food halls are opening up at such an expanse. And Phil kind of told me, he said that bar managers seem to be the best candidate, which is what I used to do. So it's very interesting. So the management is the hardest part. I mean, you've got so many moving parts. You've got, sharing the kitchen. How do you allocate cooler space, freezer space? Do you use a commissary type kitchen where everybody's using the kitchen? If that's the case, then how do you schedule the time for the kitchen? Who gets the kitchen when? Cleanliness, the Department of Health doesn't care who's in which section. It's going to look at that place as one big unit, and you're going to need one person to kind of or one company or one series of people to overlook that whole operation, so you're not getting flagged by the Department of Health, because if one person gets closed down, everybody gets closed down, and that's not good. So those are some of the other facts. What else we got? Celebrity versus crafted. Those are the 2 types of experience people are looking for right now. It's either celebrity driven or it's something that's crafted for them. A lot of times it's both. The challenges right now in food halls is, where do you start? Do you look for the location? Do you look for the chef? There are so many variables that come out there. The first thing that he says to do is to have a great coffee program. The key is to be open all day. You don't want to be closing down. You don't want to exclude any time period. You want to get as many hours as possible. So the first thing he recommends is having a very good coffee program. Number 2, getting a very good bar program going. Something that, maybe you're cutting somebody in on the profits of the bar. That leads to another thing. Leasing space versus licensing the space. One of the things he recommends, instead of leasing the space, is actually licensing the space. Why? Because our courts are constantly tied up with landlord-tenant disputes. If you go into a licensing, and I'm not a lawyer and I'm not an attorney, so check these facts for yourself. This all came up in discussion. But one of the things with licensing, it gives you more leeway to possibly to kick somebody out, and you want to be able to do that. If you have a bad vendor in there or somebody who's not playing as a team player, you want to be able to get them out of there and get somebody else in there quickly, which, as we were talking about, is not that big of a problem. The vendor spaces are easy to get leased. That's one of the good things about it. Number 3, so we've got bar coffee program, we've got a bar program. Number 3 would be a Mexican restaurant. Of course. I mean, Mexican food, I love it. I could eat it every day. But it's the handheld concept. You've got burritos, tacos. Those are the types of food that do very well, and you just can't miss with Mexican. I went over the vendors. What you want to do also is celebrate the regionality. That seems to be working the best. So whatever region you're in, celebrate that regionality. And the best idea would be to theme the food hall also to go along with that. So I see Saint Rocher is one of them that's coming out. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. I just saw the flyer the other day. But yeah, so they're the whole idea is Southern hospitality. When you walk in there, it's got a very colonial Southern feel to it. That seems to be the direction. You want to have a theme, either a theme or celebrity driven. A lot of those are the ways to think. Gotham West is a good example as I went into because they made some mistakes. They put coolers individually with each plot there. So each space. So there was. That was an issue that they probably spent too much money, whereas you could have had one large cooler and maybe used fencing or something to give everybody their own little area in there and saved some time. One of the other things that's a really good idea is to go with percentage rent. Put some skin in the game here. Maybe give certain vendors a different market rate rent, but what you want to put in there is something related to a percentage rent. Those seem to be very popular. Mobile vendor stations, another great idea. So basically you can put these stations on wheels and then move them back. Now what does this do? It gives you the capability of moving into the night, which we said was very important with a lot of these food halls. If you're just doing breakfast, lunch, and then dinner, you're waning, you're really not capitalizing on the space. So what a lot of these people are doing, you got to think outside the box too. What's normal to think of? Oh, let's do music, let's bring in a DJ, let's bring in live bands, let's do a comedy show. Think outside the box. There's other ways to get people to come in later on at night, but having these mobile vendor stations, think about that before you start setting everything up and move those back so that they can do that. Now, that also, what comes along with that is, more vendor freedom. If you give the more vendor, I'm sorry, I digress there a little bit. So let's go into another area now. We're talking about revenue. You could have revenue threshold that need to be met. If those revenue thresholds are not met, then you could have some type of wording in the license or the agreement that you can revisit that. Another thing I thought was interesting was, there's going to be so many parameters on these vendors when they come in. The more freedom that you give these vendors, higher the rent. Think about it in those terms. So the more freedom you're giving certain vendors, the more rent you should be able to get. Marketing, who's doing it well? The Pearl in San Antonio. I'm actually going to go look that up in a little bit. But he's saying up, they've got a weekly email blast that they do that really is helping to drive traffic and keep it basically top of mind with everybody. The mobile vendor stations we went into. Themed food halls are going to be coming very soon. That's the idea, like I was just talking about, not just doing a food hall and having a scattering of different type of offerings, but to do a themed food hall. Gaming centers. You're going to see a lot of gaming centers moving into the food hall concept because the two of them get along very well. People that are gaming need to get something to eat to get back on there. Okay, let's go into top concepts that are in food halls right now that seem to be doing well. Ramen noodles are doing very well. Mexican, as I just mentioned, is doing very well. Italian is doing very well. Chicken is doing very well. And then sushi, burrito, tacos, which, I listened to a great guy in Orlando talk about it as well. The handhelds, what's coming up now is you're using combinations or what they call fusion. So there's a guy in LA who's just killing it, crushing it. He does Korean tacos. Think in that type of a term. You've got an Indian bread, rotis that are being, mixing them with stuff that you wouldn't normally think of. I know custom donuts are also a big thing right now. I mean, you've got sweet and balsamic vinaigrette and custom made. Donuts are another area. You got to think small time. You shouldn't be thinking full entrees. You should be thinking small handhelds. One of the things they got into, which seems to be one of the minuses on food halls right now, is there's not enough comfortable seating. So if you're looking to do a food hall right now, you might want to think in terms of the comfort of the guest once they purchase the food. Where are they going to go? What is that experience going to be like? And that, like I said, What are you going to do at night is very important. You know, vendor stalls that move is very important. One of the ideas that's not being done right now that could be done at night is food demos. Teaching. That's a big area right now that's starting to expand. So do a class. Have somebody, get a chef in there to do a class on how to make the greatest burrito, or how to make a brisket, or whatever it may be, depending on your region. But those are some things to consider. Like I said, don't think in just terms of music comedy. Think outside the box. And the last thing I'm going to leave you with is social media. That's one thing we didn't hear. My partner Beth and I were talking about. We weren't hearing that much about social media. And you know, we're big fans of Gary Vee and how social media can be used to get your audience and capture your audience. So what he recommended was Vice Media. Definitely Vice is somebody to keep an eye on. They've got the thumbprint on the millennials, and it's all about the millennials right now. The millennials spend more money on food. They want a different type of experience. They don't want to go to the Fridays. They want the regional guy. They want the local chef who's doing well, which can be a risk for the landlord. But that's where you have to do your credit checks. You have to check into the person, meet them. You know, hospitality guys, chefs especially, are taking some on the chin right now, but there are great operators out there. There are great businessmen / chefs that are out there. You can find them. Just do your due diligence. And then he mentioned a guy who I gotta say, if you get a chance, check out Action Bronson. Action Bronson, that's the guy's name. And he mentioned this guy as being somebody who's really crushing it in social media, and also is well, check it out and leave the comments down below after you see that, because I think this guy's a hoot and a holler. And maybe make sure there's no kids in the room, because there is some type of, let's just say, some cannabis used in the videos. Anyway, I hope this was informative. I hope this was helpful. It went a little long, 12 minutes. Hope you stuck around this long. I've got a YouTube channel called South Florida's Restaurant Guy. I'm partners with Miss Beth Azor, Azor Brewer Restaurant Advisors. Food halls, there's 19 of them coming to South Florida. I wonder how they're gonna do. We're gonna find out. And take care, everybody. Have a great day.